All right, and we are live. So thank you guys for joining me tonight for our July movie club, where it was actually a special guest pick by Tim for The Boys in the Band. Before we get started on our discussion, I always like to do my little speech of housekeeping beforehand. I'm going to put this up front. There will be spoilers for the movie, so if you like to watch movies and not know what's happening, probably put this on pause and come back when you have watched it, which you can do because all of this is up on YouTube. And if you have a thought after you're watching it and you still want to tell us, even though we're no longer live, you can absolutely write it in the comments, and I try to stay on top of responding to them, but I don't always do a great job of that. But I still would like to talk about any of our picks, both these picks or any past picks that we have, which can all be found in our Facebook group, which I have put the link on the screen. And it's not just our media clubs. We have a movie club, a music listening club, and a book club, all of which are meeting this month. Our book club is actually quarterly, but this month we got all of them going on. This is the first of the three. Music club is happening on Monday night, and then our book club is happening on, I believe, Wednesday. It's the 31st. So is it Thursday? I think it might be Thursday. I don't know, whatever day the 31st is. And if you want a say in what we listen to, read, or watch next, there is a suggestion box that you can find on our Facebook group in the tabs, which is also where you will find any of our past picks. And if you like us and you like what we do, you can support us for as little as $2 a month over on Patreon. Everything that we do is open to our Facebook group members, and that includes these clubs or any of our weekly meetings about creatives, our writing group. If you're an LA local, we have meetups and things along those lines, and it's just a nice, supportive community of artists. So join us over there. Help us do what we do on Patreon. We greatly appreciate it, and we hope you can join us and also talk to us about some movies. So let's talk about The Boys in the Band, which is a 1970s movie.
There is also a 2020 remake that Netflix did.
This is also a 1968 stage play, of which I think all of the actors are the original cast members of that stage play. So this is quite literally a stage play brought to film. The screenplay, everything was exactly the same as the stage play. Well, kind of, yeah. As Tim put it.
As much as you can between play and film.
Have you guys seen this movie before?
No, actually, I have not. So yeah, this is the first time. And yeah, I also haven't seen the 2020 version. So.
Tim, you're muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Good. This is my second time. I think the first time I watched it was like 15 or 20 years ago. And I liked it, but I didn't love it. But going back to it this time, I realized that my memories of that first watch, I took something away different from it than I did this time. And we can talk about that as we get into it.
Yeah. What made you pick this movie for us?
Well, it kind of was, I wanted to tie into our book read this month. And I made a list of all the films that I thought were underappreciated from that era that we could watch in connection with the book. And as I'm going down my list, the vast majority of those films were not available to stream anywhere. I have them on DVD, but they weren't available to stream anywhere. And when it came down to Friedkin, I knew everybody had probably watched The French Connection. I was thinking about The Conversation, not streaming anywhere. And that kind of left me with The Boys in the Band or something that he did later after the American New Wave. And, there's so much stuff going on historically, and you begin to see what Friedkin would become as a director. You begin to see the roots of that in this film. So that's how this film got picked. And I also thought, knowing our crowd, I knew that they would appreciate this in a way that some other crowds that I might curate for wouldn't have appreciated it. So.
Yeah, I hadn't seen this or even knew it existed. But I did watch this one and the remake.
All right. I didn't watch the remake. I wanted to watch this earlier on in this week and then watch the remake last night. And then this week was incredibly busy for me unexpectedly. So only managed to watch the original. So I am interested in your perspective because I do have some questions about the modernization, I guess, of it. But did you guys like the movie?
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I mean, I watched it twice essentially, but I wouldn't really pick it to watch again, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. It took me a while to get into it. I think because there are just so many characters, it's a bit hard to keep track of them at first. And some of them kind of look the same. And some of them have similar names, like there's Harold and Henry or Hank.
Hank.
Yeah, Harold and Hank. So yeah, it took me a while to differentiate between them, but I started really liking it when Harold actually shows up. And yeah, that surprised me because it seemed like one of the best entrances I've ever seen. And in this movie. But yeah, overall I ended up enjoying it. I still the last thing I'll say about the general enjoyment is that I do think it maybe starts to drag, or I'm not necessarily a huge fan of these types of confined plays where a bunch of characters just sit in one room and then end up insulting each other by the end. But overall, I think this was a very good version of that type of play, I guess. But I'm not that well versed in the theater or anything. But so yeah, in general, I enjoyed it.
Hearing Derek's response, that made me think about why I had that very wasn't sure how I felt about it the first time I saw it. I think maybe I was overwhelmed by the number of characters. I don't think I understood some of the subtext that was going on. And this time it bowled me over. I think all the performances are just incredible, particularly the guy who plays Michael. It floored me, the performances, and I got more out of Cliff Gorman's performance of Emery than I did the first time. I think I started to see what he does with the character, and I understood the character better after watching it this time than I did the first time.
I love Emery. He reminds me of so many of my friends. Such a character. Yeah, I think it was a little hard to follow in the beginning because of all the names just being thrown around. You're like, wait, who's who? Who's doing what? Who's where? But that's why watching it a second time, it was a lot easier to appreciate.
The names became irrelevant, and the character of each individual character became more distinct, I thought. I could tell them apart by their behavior. I didn't know the name. I didn't need to know their names to know who they were. I could tell the way they presented themselves, who they were.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it was just a matter of like learning who's who. Like, especially in like the first 10 or 20 minutes, they're just throwing out a bunch of names all over the place, and you don't know any of these people yet, but you're hearing their names. So watching it through a second time, it's much easier to follow. Oh, right, that person.
I put this up because one of the top one is from the remake and the bottom's from the original. And I just think the outfit choices of being almost exactly the same is they make no changes.
They're a little bit more contemporary for our time.
Especially Emery.
Which is interesting because the remake is set in 1968.
Is it really?
Interesting.
Yeah, because when you think about it, like it would be difficult to do a modernized version of this because it's not nearly as taboo. Like back then, you could be thrown in jail, and Emery does get arrested. We find out about being gay, but nowadays, like
Mart Crowley talked about how by the time the play went on stage, and a lot of some of this is coming out from the book on Billy Friedkin that I have. But Crowley said by the time the play got on stage, it was already 2 to 3 years out of date, and by the time the film came out, it was really out of date in terms of the characters and the world they were living in at that time, which seems
Really?
like, wow, that's pretty amazing in that short time. I would have to dig in further to see exactly what he meant by that. But
that's interesting because I know up through the 80s, they were making arrests for homosexuality. So
no, it wasn't just that. It was the way that gay people behaved in public and how I guess in the way they treated each other.
Okay, he doesn't know a lot of gay people then.
He was gay. He was gay.
Oh, interesting.
So yeah, I would have to. I should have. I've been so busy this week. I didn't have time to dig down deeper in it. But from what he said, the culture told him that it was already out of date by the time he got it on stage, and by the time it got on screen, it was even more out of date. But I think he's talking about very subtle changes in gay culture and the reaction to gay culture at the time.
That's fascinating to me because, I mean, looking through our modern lens, we can see like the breadth of history and how far gay rights have come since 1968. But like, yeah, I'd be very interested to dig into what that means because like I said, I know people like this. Like my dad is a gay man who tried to be straight and, so.
While we continue this discussion, I'm going to flick through the book and see if I can find Crowley's comments on that.
So, terrible fact. The last person who was arrested on charges of being homosexual was actually 2003. Kind of. It's technically in 13 states, sodomy was illegal. So they brought it up in 2003 because people were arrested on those charges. For the official crime of being homosexual, it was 1994.
Well, yeah, and most of it was anti-sodomy laws. That's how they targeted.
But it was 2003 in the United States.
Wow.
Yeah, watching this movie, I was kind of with Beckett that it seems very modern in its depiction of gay people. And I'm not like in the gay culture or anything, so I don't know all of the subtleties of how things have changed, but this just seemed like for the time it came out, seems like an incredibly positive and subtle depiction of gayness, especially because my previous impression of William Friedkin in terms of gay culture was his movie Cruisin', which actually came out after this one, and it stars Al Pacino, and it's a much more problematic and stereotypical depiction of gay culture that Al Pacino has basically disowned. And it was actually protested by gay rights groups when that movie came out, when Cruisin' came out. So that was like my impression of William Friedkin and what he thought was gay culture. And so I was kind of shocked by how just subtle and like humanistic that this portrayal was in Boys in the Band.
Probably
but-
has to do with the writing, right? Because this is
Yeah.
an adapted stage play. So
Mhm.
Right. With a screenplay that was written by the playwright.
To be fair to Friedkin on Cruisin', which has never been a film that I liked, but I think what people miss is that it's a look at a very specific subculture of gay. It wasn't meant to represent all gay people, although I think it might have been taken that way. But it was showing a specific subculture of gay life. The other thing is the protesters were protesting a film that they hadn't seen. Those protests took place on opening day, and none of those people had seen the film by the time it came out. So they were protesting about stuff they hadn't heard. There's this interesting quote that's kind of sort of not really related, but I think it's very interesting because Friedkin, he's got The Night They Raided Minsky's is about the only film that anybody's seen at that point. And then he just got off The Birthday Party, which is a Pinter play. And he says about this, he says, I had no particular desire to make a film about homosexuals. It was just the best script to come at me at the time.
it is a very compelling script. I really like the character work. I mean, I think that's why conversely to what you had said before, Derek, I like these kinds of plays where it's like exploring characters in a confined setting and like how they react to each other. So
In the as far as the confined setting is concerned, the play was all in one setting. Friedkin opened it up. The exterior shots that you see before and the stuff that takes place on the patio before the rain comes, that all wasn't in the play. Friedkin did that intentionally. And then just before they get into the game, he uses the rain to drive them into the confined space to make the game that much more intense.
yeah,
I will say
interesting.
also, it does seem very ahead of its time in terms of casting because almost all of the actors in this 1970 version were actually gay. And in fact, Emery is one of the only straight people in the cast, which also surprised me. But
Really?
yeah. But like
Also,
the
Hank
others-
and
what's that?
Hank and Bernard, Lawrence Luckenbill, and Reuben Green, who played Bernard, were all three are straight, and they're also the last three living members, except for Cliff Gorman died 25 years ago. But most, as I recall, most if not all of the gay actors died from complications of AIDS early on. I think Cowboy was the first to pass away. And Cliff Gorman and his wife took care of him when he was dying.
Yeah, so all of them did die from all of the gay members of the cast, as well as some of the people that worked on it.
That's sad.
Yeah. And this was an interesting point that I had to like look up is like, when did the AIDS epidemic like start? Because I'm not gonna lie, when I watch a lot of like gay like cast things that take place in this time frame, AIDS tends to be the main focus and the main plot point of it. And it's so interesting to watch something before that.
When did the epidemic like really kind of take off?
Really soon after this, like 1973.
Oh, really? I don't remember it that way, but I,
Yeah.
I was a straight guy. I am a straight guy. I didn't actually hear about it until it was full blown. Ronald Reagan and is talking about it, and and
Yeah,
a lot
that was by design. A lot of
Yeah.
higher ups were trying to hide it from the general public.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's generally got considered an epidemic in like early 80s, but like you started to see cases of it rising in like the 70s.
Yeah, when watching this movie, I also had the question of when AIDS started because actually there's an early scene in the movie where one of the characters is talking about being sick. I can't even remember who it was. It was like before they get to the apartment. Someone is on the phone, or it might have been Michael and that other guy who starts with a D. Yeah, I'm
Donald.
getting the characters all mixed up, but there's something about someone feeling sick. So I thought, oh, this is going to become AIDS eventually. And I
I
thought
also
that,
had that thought.
yeah, and I thought that could even be what Alan is like sad about when he calls Michael in the beginning and he's like, I need to talk to you. I thought that could be AIDS. But yeah, I think, yeah, I haven't looked up the exact dates for when AIDS really started ramping up, but I thought that's where this story was going.
um, yeah, I also did. I feel like I didn't know where this movie was going at any point in time, mostly because I feel like 75% of it is setup. So 75% of it, you're like, oh, what's Alan, the straight guy who comes to the party's opinion? And then it turns into like a weird horror, which I greatly enjoyed the entire difference of like filmography. The movie looks entirely different as soon as they go inside.
It was a little noirish at that point.
Yeah,
I
the
think
shadows are much starker at that
I-
point.
I think it's Donald who's like against a window pane as there's just lightning happening in the background. And I'm just like, is someone about to die?
I was convinced somebody was going to die. Yeah. That like one of them was going to kill one of them.
Well,
But no, just a weird, twisted psychological game as someone just descends into like the anger of drink.
Yeah. I want to know your guys' opinions on this game.
It's such a twisted thing, and Michael is so over the edge at that point. It's funny because after watching it the first time all that time ago, I remembered Harold as being this very ominous character and not being all that revealing, and I was completely wrong about that. And I realized that Harold's actually one of the rocks of the group, and it's Michael who is so just. Harold captures it perfectly when he says, "You're a homosexual who doesn't want to be a homosexual," and God, that just strikes at what Michael is doing. I mean, it's like he wants to destroy everybody out of the fact that he hates himself. And that's a weird take at that point of the play, because when we see him in the beginning, he seems very comfortable with who he is. But when you get him in this little group and the cattiness starts to really come out, I don't want to say he's a fucking asshole, because that's not what it is, because we see that what he's doing comes out of pain very clearly. This is not a bad guy. This is a guy who's just so fucked up because of the way the culture, the way gay people have to live because of the culture that we lived in at that time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I didn't like the character when I watched the original. I wasn't really following. Like, the dialogue is so interesting because I think that the deliveries are really good in the original. The performances are so subtle until it gets to, like, you know, the climax. But it's like I wasn't really following the twist, like the turn. Whereas when I watched the 2020 version, the turn was much more evident when Harold showed up, and immediately Michael just turned on a dime and he was a different person. So
I want to know what the gift was.
yeah.
We ever see that? I don't think we ever see it. It's just kind of, this was personal.
Oh,
And then
did
he
you-
just kind of
Well,
puts,
and it also makes me think because of the way he reacted when Harold showed up, and that's when he started drinking as well, because he hadn't had a drink before that.
But he was already
What is-
on edge
what
because
is
of the
there-
fight.
But what is their relationship? Like, I'm so curious about him and Harold and what their backstory is, because it doesn't really go into that, except that we know all these guys are friends.
the character development in this movie is insane. That said, I hate all of them except for Bernard and Donald. Like, those are the only two characters. Because, like, this movie starts and I'm like, man, what a wacky, zany group of friends where everybody has their own distinct personality and it just feels like a bunch of random people thrown in a room, but they get along. How nice would that be? And then I was like, I don't want these people.
I mean,
I don't
like I
like
said,
any of them.
I know a lot of people like this, so I don't know.
You know,
The only one I really had a problem with was Michael, because he was being such an ass about everything at the end.
yeah, at the beginning, Hank is so uptight that you know he's being such a dick in the beginning, and he winds up being one of the good guys, generally speaking, in the play. But everybody changes who you're rooting for, if you're rooting for anybody, and who you don't like changes between the beginning and the end of the film. And I still, what is Harold's? It feels like Harold is somebody like they all look up to or something. Harold is there's some kind of god that they, you know, that their whole, you know, they, something about him, which I think of all the characters in the play film, he's the one that seems, aside from Emery, he seems to be the one most comfortable with his sexuality. He, you know, he knows what he is, he knows what his flaws are, and he's learned to live with them, although he does get catty sometimes to make himself, you know, to get all chesty, you know, over somebody. You know, the way they all treat Cowboy as stupid is an interesting, it's an interesting thing. I don't think Hank ever says anything nasty about Cowboy, but most of them take pot shots at him. But I think they just, Harold was like, I think maybe Harold's a little bit older, year or two, in case of some, maybe 5 years, than the rest of them. But that was my take, is that Harold is this centerpiece for this group somehow.
I also love his exit as well as his entrance. His exit of just like, well, that was fun. Call you tomorrow.
He does have some of the best lines.
Yeah, I will say, if you haven't watched the remake, you should, because Zachary Quinto, I mean, I love him to death just in anything, but he does a really great job at Harold.
The other thing that I came away with this time, it was interesting because I watched the trailer before I made the pick, and I'm watching Emery, and he's so flamboyant, it's almost over the top. And he continues to be, and I know there are gay people like that. Yeah, I've even known some of them, but it just feels like it's a straight actor trying to do gay. But then when we get to the phone call and he tells the story, or maybe he hasn't made the phone call yet, it's before they do the phone call, and he tells the story about the dentist that he's in love with. And it's so heartbreaking and so moving. You just like, okay, this guy is almost like the most humane, human, lovable guy in this whole group of characters. It just when he does that monologue, and it just breaks my fucking heart.
Yeah. He I mean, I didn't know that it was played by a straight actor. That, you know, even more putting on a caricature, right, of a gay person. But those guys do exist. I know many of them.
I will say, and this is actually a point that I think I agree with on this, of this was very divisive in the gay community. And this is a part of it that I like firmly agree with, is that I don't think that this did gay people a lot of favors. I think that this was like this was like one of the first like portrayals of gay life, but I don't think it did like I said, I don't like any of these characters. And a lot of people felt like it did a lot of harm to gay people in the portrayal of gay people. And I think I 100% agree with that, because I did know that Emery was straight. I watched that character and I was like, there's no way that's a gay actor. But his speech on the phone is absolutely incredibly done. I am so on the fence with this, because I feel like I don't view this movie as like okay, but I feel like I would give it 3 stars, because there are parts of it that I really like and parts of it that I really, really hate.
Like what?
One, I hate all the characters. I didn't like that I felt like I was trying to figure out what the plot was through the vast majority of it. I don't think that it portrayed gay people in a very good light, because I think everybody was terrible. I definitely feel like this would have been an amazing stage play, but I'm not a huge fan of like the stage play as a movie format in general. I don't like feeling like I know that this is a stage play. So I feel like I would have liked a little bit of a differentiation there, or a bit of changeover for that. But I do think the cinematography was great. I like everybody's acting once they come inside. And overall, like when I think about the characters and the way that the characters are portrayed, I do like the things that they are portraying. I just did not like watching the movie.
I can see that. I mean, everybody comes off really catty and just not likable throughout most of the film. And then at the end, I feel like Emery is the only sympathetic character, because he's the one taking care of everybody. But
looking at it from the outside, I mean, I can appreciate why gay people might have an issue with it. But from what I see, these characters are all real people. I believe they existed. And I believe, if I was going to say, I don't know that this is what Crowley was attempting to do, but I think he was, I think subtextually, or maybe he didn't intend it this way, but what I take from it is he was talking about how gay people were in some ways their own worst enemy within the culture. And I think, and what he's also saying about that is they're in that box because of how the non-gay world looks at them and treats them. And so they're just kind of in this space where a lot of their social participation involves each other. And there's just, because they can't take out their aggressions on straight culture, they take it out on each other.
Yeah,
I feel like a lot of those kinds of attitudes come from a place of, self-loathing, which is what Michael's, ending monologue is about.
I also feel like this is a movie that you have to kind of discuss afterwards. It's not a movie that you can just watch and sit with. I think it needs to be discussed afterwards, and I think that's actually a point off for movies a lot of the time for me.
I disagree,
because I don't think that because I don't think it's clear in a lot of things, and I think there needs to be a discussion about it in order for this movie's points to be made.
it's for a very specific audience, right? Especially at the time that it was written. I can see it just going over most people's heads. But like if you know the lingo and you kind of like are in the culture, then you know, it's made for a specific viewer. But
it kind of feels to me like a movie that was made to chip away at people's ideas. Like almost like put the foot in the door, but also in such a way that it can't be ignored.
Right. I think that is probably true of the film. The play probably, you know, had it didn't have as far a reach of audience, I presume, because, you know, not a lot of, I don't know, I would just assume that it would get less play as a stage play.
Also, theater has an entirely different audience.
Yeah.
It was if for what it's worth, it never made it to Broadway. It was an off-Broadway play. I think, again, I don't know this, but I think Crowley wrote this play for a gay audience to say something to them.
That's what I'm saying.
Right. But I think having watched it this time, and I wish that when I watched it the first time, I wish that I had a group that I could have discussed it with. Because I think I would have understood it better then. And I understand it now having watched it again, and then I'm learning more having this discussion with you guys. But I think there are certain universals in it about how self-hatred poisons relationships. You know, I don't think all the characters are hateful. I mean, I think Hank is a little bit, you know, he's a little bit, I don't know, he's a little bit off-putting at the beginning, but he winds up being like the adult in the fucking room. And he seems more comfortable with his sexuality than most of them, except for Harold. But I think that's also because he can pass for straight. And I'm not saying that because the actor is straight. I think the way he carries himself and the way he acts, he does not have the same kind of body language or speaks the same kind of language as the rest of the characters. He seems almost apart from gay culture. And I think might be a certain level of comfort for him in that. But then he also, you know, he admits the fact that, you know, he was married, but now I'm in love with whoever his the photographer, Larry. You know, I'm in love with Larry, and but Hank seems to be the most comfortable with his relationship once he gets past that snotty first act. You know, he just seems very down to earth when compared to the other.
And he passes for straight because the character's written as bisexual.
Good point.
I also want to point out, since we're discussing Hank and Larry, they were supposed to make out. And it was cut.
Because of the Hays Code.
And they regret that decision.
Yeah, I
think leans into my idea that this was, I think, made as a movie to upset audiences. I am convinced that is fully why it was made. To
challenge certain attitudes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think William Friedkin kind of has a rebel attitude in general. But I was going to say about like the cut making out scene, I did watch a making of thing on YouTube. It was around 24 minutes long or something. And they had an interview with William Friedkin where he was trying to convince the actors and maybe the producer, I can't remember, that the making out scene was necessary. So they ended up trying to, I think they actually filmed it, but he let the actors improvise. And so the actors ended up sitting in a room and crying first and then embracing and then making out, I believe. But then, yeah, they decided to cut it. And I will say about the previous topic of Emery being stereotypical and whatnot, and played by a straight actor and so on. William Friedkin in this documentary does say that if he were to do this movie now, he would try to tone down Emery's performance at least a bit. But he didn't put the blame on the actor at all. He just said if he would do it now, he would tone it down. So I think William Friedkin, well, he's dead now, but he would have agreed with some of what you were saying.
Yeah. To be fair, that's kind of how the character's written.
This was actually considered to be a film before William Friedkin was attached to it. But Mark Crowley, who I now have up on the screen, this is Mark Crowley. He's the playwright. He insisted on using the original cast, and the original producers wanted to fire all the gay actors and replace all the gay actors with Hollywood stars. And Mark Crowley was like, absolutely fucking not. And held off on it until he could bring back. He was very specific to bring on only the original cast. However, that's an interesting statement because from everything that I've read about this, the vast majority of the actors were in the closet still. In the closet, like professionally, the way that I think was expected of them to be.
One of the reasons this play actually got produced and became a film is because Lawrence Luckinbill went to school with Mark Crowley, and he was very supportive of the work, and so he put his name out in front in order to get the play on stage. And he was told that he would never be able to work again if he did this. And he's like, yeah, fuck that, I'm doing it anyway. And he was very successful to stay. He's still alive. He's like 90 something, late 90s. He's been married to Lucy Arnaz since 1980, I think. And, he had a long career. He did not do a lot of films, but he never stopped working on stage.
In regards to the game, would you remain friends with somebody who posed this as a game?
It's so diabolical, right?
Yeah. Also, just the way he treats, I understand it's coming from a place of hurt, but the fact that nobody was just like, all right, let's go cordon Michael off in a room.
Right. Why nobody stood up and said, hell no, I'm not playing this. This is ridiculous.
Yeah, but then you wouldn't have a play or a film. He gets some pushback.
Yeah.
But then, Hank turns it around and uses it as a mechanism to convey to Larry how he feels about him. The two of them actually use the game to get a positive outcome for their relationship. So, and I hadn't thought about that until just now, till you brought that up. But so they turn the game around and make it work for purposes very different from what Michael's reasoning is.
Right. Well, Michael's whole reason for doing it is to get Alan to come out. That's his whole purpose.
Well, Alan is everything that Michael wants to be. And so he has to break Alan down to prove that Alan is not the thing that Michael wishes he was.
Mm-hmm.
Why does he have to take down all his friends in order to, that's a lot of collateral damage.
And it's so weird that I feel like the only friendship that got ruined in this entire thing was Michael's friendship with Alan. So, incredibly strong friend group. I mean,
I don't know. I have a feeling the relationship between Michael and Donald will probably be fine, but I think Michael did some serious damage to his relationship to everybody else.
Well, especially Bernard, right? Like
Yeah.
Bernard might not want to come back to Michael's house ever again after this.
I kind
guess-
of got the impression, based on some of the jokes they tell at the start of it, when everybody's having a happy time, that this is not the first time that something along those lines have happened.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think their friendship is based on just good times. I think these games have been played before. Not this one specifically, but just like hurtful things being said inside the group.
I think it's probably a problem of proximity, right? Because at this time, it wasn't cool to be out. You couldn't be out and be gay and, just kind of have friends all the time who know who you are completely, right? So they kind of get sequestered into this group, and no matter what happens, they'll stay friends because they know everything about each other. They can be authentic with each other.
And it's too hard to find new friends.
Yeah.
Crowley wrote a sequel called The Men in the Band. I'm completely unfamiliar with it, but apparently it takes up where these characters were later on. I know that Gorman turned down the role of Emery for that play because he didn't feel that he wanted to revisit that character at that point. But other than that, I don't know anything about the sequel.
But to your point, Rebecca, that's why I'm so curious about Harold and Michael's relationship outside of this. Like, what are these guys to each other?
What was the gift? I really want to know, and we'll never know. I do want to talk about the title, The Boys in the Band, which is a reference to A Star is Born, but still feels it's an interesting title.
Yeah, it makes me think of like the Monkees. I mean, this poster is very Beatles.
Yeah, it is. It's very much of the time. I'm actually a huge fan of like the rainbow flag cover. I think that is great. But anyways, the title is a reference to a line is a Star is Born. It's you're singing for yourself and the boys in the band. And I have never seen A Star is Born, so I have no frame of reference for this.
I was wondering about the title and where it came from. So,
yeah, I've only seen the newest Star is Born, and I don't remember Boys in the Band being said at all. So yeah, that's new information to me. But it is an interesting title. It, in my mind, because I've heard of this movie before, and in my mind, I would always get it confused with the title "The Boys in Brazil," which is a
very different film.
Yeah, I kept waiting for the band to come up. I'm like, where's this band?
Did you really?
Probably a little bit.
I have a feeling that Randy Schultz, who wrote a book about gays in the military back around the time, it was published back around the time when Clinton was president, and we were going over the whole don't ask, don't tell. And The Boys in Company C, God, it's been so long since I looked that book. That was about gays in the military at the time. And not just at the time, but it was kind of a history of gays in the military. I'd have to go back and look at it. And The Boys in Company C, I've always associated it with this title, The Boys in the Band, just because of the boys thing. And I wonder if Schultz had some connection, was making some connection in that way, or if there's maybe that's something within gay culture, the boys in the band, the boys in this, the boys in that. I don't know.
No, they call each other girls.
These guys definitely do.
They really do.
They refer to whoever as she all the time.
Yeah, that's a gay thing.
All right, so we are coming up on an hour. Is there anything that anybody wanted to touch on in particular?
Yes, I want to know, do you guys think that Alan is in the closet?
No. I think Alan was leaving his wife for other reasons and then was just like, I don't want to end up like any of these people.
Why did he have to talk to Michael, though, so badly?
Because he left his wife and needed to come to terms with it. That is my own personal viewpoint on it, was he was leaving his wife, not for another woman, but just in general, for himself maybe, and then was just like, I don't want to deal with any of this. And
I think he's 100% in the closet and chooses to stay there.
It's hard to say. You know, I think Crowley pushes it towards what Rebecca is saying when he has Alan make the phone call, and then Michael grabs the phone away and discovers that Alan is talking to his wife. And Michael is close. Michael is so close to the family that he knows the wife and he knows the kids. And so I think that could suggest what Rebecca is saying. I think that's one of the great questions about this story. Is Alan gay or is he not? Well, I don't think the play makes a conclusive statement on it.
I think it kind of leaves you up to decide.
Yeah, it's totally like a J.J. Abrams type of mystery box question. And even in the making of documentary that I watched, the actor for Alan refused to reveal whether he was closeted, whether the character was closeted or not. And like he said that people often came up to him on the street and asked him, but he wouldn't reveal it to them either. I think
I think it goes, okay, no, sorry.
Okay. I was going to just say, maybe in my personal opinion, I might lean toward what Rebecca was saying, that he might, I don't know, maybe he's questioning his sexuality, which is why he shows up to this gay party in the first place. But yeah, I think I might lean toward him not being in the closet, but I really don't know. I think maybe there's evidence both ways. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think it can be interpreted either way. And I will say that this actor's portrayal leaves that question up in the air a lot more. If you watch the 2020 remake, it's a lot less ambiguous. And in that one, they choose to portray him as definitely straight.
I was leaning towards, having watched the second time, I think the first time I watched it, I thought he was gay. And it was more ambiguous this time, but I was leaning towards him being in the closet. But after what Rebecca said and thinking about what goes on with the play and thinking about how ambiguous his relationship, not his relationship, but the way he makes contact with Hank, is ambiguous. Is he asking Hank to leave because he wants to be with Hank because they have so much in common? Or is he asking Hank to leave because Hank is married and he should be protecting his marriage, and that's Alan making a statement about the sanctity of marriage or something like that? And it could go either way. That's how ambiguous that is between Alan and Hank. Why is Alan so interested in Hank?
I like the line that when Alan was just like, but you were married to a woman, and Hank is like, but men leave their wives for other women all the time. I just left for a man. And he's just like, yeah, but that's a normal thing.
Yeah.
But for me, in terms of like Alan's position in this, I think that he is, like I said before, I think he represents everything that Michael wants to be and wants to pretend like he is. And I think that the fact that Alan is clearly hiding something and is distraught and like going through emotions in his head, the idea that it can't possibly be anything other than closeted feelings coming out. I don't think Michael's able to even talk to Alan about anything because he's so far in his head. The only possible thing that he can be upset about is the exact thing that Michael is upset about. that was my own personal interpretation of that. I don't think we're ever meant to find out. I think that was Alan's purpose for the story.
Hmm.
Yeah, the
Um,
other thing is that all the other characters, not all the other characters, but most of the other characters think that Alan is in the closet. Um, and then, I'm starting to understand Michael more from what Beckett's saying. Um, so Michael seems to believe that Alan is straight, I think. Does Michael believe Alan is straight? I'll put that out to the group.
Hard to tell. I think Rebecca's spot on with definitely he's projecting his frustrations onto him. Whether or not he actually thinks he's gay, I don't know.
And I think it's a smart thing to leave it ambiguous because it really leaves it for the audience who has their own things to project onto him. Alan could be experiencing anything, and whatever you're doing as the audience is probably like what you're going to project onto it. I think it says more about you than it does ever about Alan. Probably the same thing with that present that I desperately want to know what it is. What you think it is says a lot more about you than anything about the characters.
I mean, it's a picture of Michael with an inscription.
I don't know. Yeah, the way Leonard Fry, who plays Harold, plays that scene, I think he brings out the whole, is that really what the gift is or is it not? There's something in the way that Harold describes it that suggests he's fucking with us and he's fucking with the other people at the party. It's an incredible performance. They're all incredible performances. I mean, just if for no other reason, I love this film for the level of craft that these actors play, and playing, generally speaking, not likable characters like this. That's a lot of commitment to, and to play them so effectively.
Yeah, they all feel a bit more sympathetic in the remake, and I don't know if that's just because of the modern acting style or what.
Maybe it's just an age thing, because being the age, I found them very sympathetic, but I'm willing to give them the benefit of the doubt this second time that I watched it that I don't think I was able to give them the first time I watched it.
Yeah, I will say I found all of the performances to be excellent, especially Michael. I will say, like, once he starts bullying people in the game, he does become unsympathetic. But I was sort of willing to go with it. And I will say, on the topic of Alan, I also found it very interesting how as soon as he walks in the party, it's like the party stops, because there's like this thing where almost all of the gay characters start acting straight around him, other than Emery, of course, because Emery actually plays up his gayness once Alan walks in. But I found that to be very effective and nice, or, well, not nice, but like, I don't know, just some very effective moments when it comes to code switching.
Yeah, and there are some good like beat changes throughout the film, but which I didn't notice as much watching the first time, and that could just be, not as much like the directing style, but more like the fact that I felt like I had to concentrate to follow because I didn't know who anyone was whenever they were referenced. So watching it a second time, it was easier to follow. So I picked up on the beats a little more.
Yeah.
Did they update the dialogue? Because I feel like the dialogue in this movie did not age well.
Yeah, there's definitely some racist language that did not age well, for sure. Most of it I will say is word for word, but they did update some of the epithets.
Okay.
Yeah, I still haven't watched the remake. I am curious to watch it now, but like I was saying about ambiguity with Alan, the remake was made by Ryan Murphy, who is not a subtle creator. He's very like in your face and on the nose. So I would kind of expect that from him, that it would be less ambiguous.
All right. And we
Um,
are pretty much almost at an hour. Does anyone have any final thoughts? Real quick.
This is a great place to start with Friedkin, although I would recommend going back to the previous film, The Birthday Party, because that's when you really start seeing how Friedkin is interested in the interior person and what makes them tick and what makes them do things. And, he follows the boys in the band with the French Connection. And then after that, he does The Exorcist. And after that, he does his remake of Wages of Fear called Sorcerer. And then he makes the mistake of going back to comedy. Man can't direct comedy to save his life. Watch Night They Raided Minsky's or The Brink's Job, if you don't believe me, or the War Profiteers movie. I can't remember what it's called. But he's got no touch for comedy. He has great touch with psychological violence and aberration is really what his thing is. And of all the 70s filmmakers, he has a very unique style compared to, say, Scorsese, Coppola, and the rest of the gang from the American New Wave during that time.
Yeah, I agree. Like he had a super varied career, and like I kind of mentioned in the beginning, I was surprised that this was directed by William Friedkin, not just because of Cruisin', which it's been a long time since I've seen, but just because he went from this to The French Connection with like that famous car chase, and then The Exorcist and so on. I would not have guessed that he would have started with this movie, but I haven't, or not started, because I haven't seen The Birthday Party, but I'm interested to see some of his earlier work.
I highly recommend The Birthday Party. It's not easy to find, but it is out there. It's a phenomenal play. Robert Shaw, written by Harold Pinter, basically filmed in one room, and it's seriously intense. And all of Friedkin's films during the 70s from 1970, or maybe it's 69 that he did Birthday Party, all the way up through Sorcerer. There's just a streak of 5 incredibly perfect films, as far as I'm concerned.
Tim, are you a big fan of Friedkin?
I am a fan of this period of Billy Friedkin. I am a big fan of this period in Friedkin's career.
All right.
We can discuss him as a person when we do the book next week.
Oh, we will.
All right, guys. I'm going to end this call for the evening, but thank you guys for joining me, and I hope to see you on the next one.
Bye.